Perfect, the moon. You're a quick study. So today, as I promised, we're going to wrap up the Future Shock Part 2.
Yeah.
And I want to also finish with the passage in Proverbs 3 that was called the true security. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, come again tomorrow and I will give it, when you have it in your hand. Do not plan harm against your neighbor who lives trustingly beside you. Do not quarrel with anyone without cause, when no harm has been done to you. And from the book of the young poet Rupi Kaur, her book Milk and Honey, this poem is simply entitled Number 34. Most importantly, love, like it's the only thing you know how. At the end of the day, all this means nothing. This page, where you're sitting, your degree, your job, the money, nothing even matters except love and human connection. Who you loved, how deeply you loved them, how you touched the people around you, and how much you gave. So last week we took a deep dive into two significant and simultaneous cultural shifts that we're going through in the Western world, if not globally. I touched on the importance of our interior relationships, our connection to ourself and our connection to our source. And I also feel like that's kind of the rock on which we can build. Those two relationships become the foundation for building against these shifting sands. And I promised that we'd take a look at two exterior relationships that may further help us move more surely into a changing world. These two exterior relationships in my book are first our connection to other humans, and secondly our connection to nature. I thought, well, that's a news flash. Humans are part of nature. But to me, that connection is such an important topic and such a big topic that it's not worth squeezing into today's message. So I want us to put a bookmark in that, and then let us look at interpersonal relationships, those relationships we have with other humans. Throughout human history, relationships have largely been based in a tribe or a clan. That's essentially our families and our families' families, and the extended families from that. Close connections are also based in proximity. So our neighbors, our communities, people that were around us became part of our connections. My parents actually grew up knowing each other as kids because of the association of primitive Baptist churches that met on a quarterly basis, like Quakers used to do here in North Carolina. They would meet and they would have lunch on the grounds. Oh, I remember that food. When what my grandmother Code would call it, sociation. When sociation met, there was food to be had, even if you had to sweat through 2 hours of primitive Baptist preaching. And that's what I remember, and that's what my parents grew up with, going to these associations of churches. All puns intended, we humans hunger for connections that are fulfilling. It used to be that the workplace was yet another consistent place where you could make deep and meaningful relationships with people. But even though it's true still, it's changed drastically. The average length of stay, if you will, with a person with a company is a little bit more than 2.5 years now. So no gold watch after 40 years with the factory. The annual turnover rate is 60%. So not a fun time for HR. Mm-hmm. And according to the Pew Research Center, as of 2021, total, or there are about 50% of people over at the age of 55 have retired. They have just left the workforce, and that jumps to 67% when you start looking at people from 65 to 74. So there's a large amount of people 55 and older who aren't even in the workforce. Even being part of a faith community is not as a source of connection as it used to be. The Gallup poll back in 1937 added the question, are you a member of a faith community, to their surveys? And at that time, it was 73% of all Americans were part of some faith community. When they did that same survey in 2021, it was 47%, which is a little less than half. Kind of surprised me, but we also know that membership versus participation has even dropped further than that. The thing is, we humans are amazingly connected thanks to technology, and yet it's becoming increasingly more difficult to be connected face to face and human to human. In a time of dramatic change, then how do we create and nurture relationships? How do we care for one another, even when that could be a passing stranger, or it could be a stranger we've known for years? You know, a lot of those people. It could be a friend, or it could be a family member. Well, there's actually a large list of ways we could intentionally connect with other people. But for the sake of our time and our brains, I'm going to give you a list of 6. First and foremost, and I have to say, first and most difficult, is paying attention. Just paying attention. Not reaching for your phone, not looking at your watch. I think reaching for my phone is the worst habit. But practice listening without formulating a response or without injecting your opinion while the other person is still talking. I have tried to do this consciously, and it's really, it takes a lot of energy. We have to be patient. And then when we aren't, using our 2 ears and we want to use our one mouth, we have to ask curious questions that show the other person, I hear what you say. Can you tell me more? Or what about this? The simple act of making eye contact now shows the person that you're paying attention to them. It's amazing how difficult it is for other people to meet our eye contact when they are so accustomed to not being listened to. It took me over a year to get the servers at Wake Forest University in their cafeteria to trust that I was seeing them and make eye contact back with me. They were so used to being invisible. So the second thing is to be open. In addition to listening more than we talk, being open means not acting as though we have all the answers. Even if we do have all the answers, we may have been there, done that, and have studied it, but we don't have the whole story, even if we know all the facts. We don't have the perspective of the other person. So notice when you're feeling attached to being right, I'm really good at that. Or you got to have the last word. I joke about with Tracy, there are certain people that I know they're going to text me back even though the topic is over because I tell Tracy, they always need the last word. And so I give it to them by, yep, they're going to text me again. So stay open to what the other person brings to the table and make room for what they have to offer. When we intentionally stay open, we're also making room for what you might want to call the Holy Spirit or mystery. We haven't filled in all the blanks, and that makes room for what isn't in the scope of our brains to be part of the conversation. Thirdly, consider if you are offering the other person a sense of safety. And what do I mean by that? I know I would probably, if I was a betting person, bet no one here would ever go beat up somebody. So, yet the person we're talking to is pretty safe when it comes to physical safety. But are you reacting without judgment? Are you responding without judgment? Do your words and your actions make space for every aspect of the other person? Or do they somehow make them hide part of who they are? It's hard to catch ourselves even with ingrained cultural biases that we grew up hearing that we don't even know are part of how we behave with other people. The way we judge others is actually a reflection on how we judge ourselves, which is the hardest thing to look at. Instead of how I'm judging them, is how am I judging me? That would have me believe that or say that. Fourth is to be respectful. We all know that the least among us has something to say to us that could teach us. And we all have our own special purpose. So it is up to us to respect how another person's perspective can be helping them live their purpose or helping them be part of our relationship together. I once had the pleasure of being mentored through a real twist of fate by a retired New York University art professor who had retired to Greensboro, of all places. And to demonstrate if a painting was complete, he would hold the canvas up and he would block any color on the canvas. And when he did that, if the painting looked incomplete without that color, then the painting was complete because every aspect was necessary for it. And to me, that's what is being respectful in relationships is like. That we've allowed every part of ourselves and every part of the other person to be present. And therefore, our connection to each other has a completeness to it. And I feel that way about being here. When somebody's absent, it's like that color has been blocked from the canvas. And there's an energy missing from the group. I really do feel that. It's like, oh, I miss Dan sitting here in his silence and David with his stack of books. And, there's something missing when someone isn't here. Lastly, and not least important, is humor. To me, laughing with other people creates a common bond. Even if you make a sound like woohoo or high five somebody, I always say high fives and cupcakes, that triggers something positive in everybody's brain. Amy Cuddy, I've talked about even how you stand in a group or how you have your body language can trigger a person's brain positively. So laugh. It moves oxygen in everybody's body. It dissipates energy. When you go to a meeting, I don't want to go to this meeting. But if you laugh, you're shaking off that energy. And so is everyone else. And, I don't know if y'all are like me. I always need a good laugh, and it helps to laugh. So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir about all this. I know I'm preaching to the preacher. Y'all, my master's thesis was on congregational dialogue, and it brings me to tears it still brings me to tears when I was discerning this message. It's like the song you sang this morning, Dear Lord, forgive me for these conversations I've had that I have not been listening. I've not been respecting the other person. And I've got to go and apologize to a couple of people that I know I've not been listening deeply. This, from my work and from my experience, I know intellectually that the most important factor in a fulfilling connection is to pay attention with deep listening and genuine curiosity. When we express a sincere desire to know the other person, even if it's not a perfect desire, we begin to hear not only their words, we can hear what lies beneath their words. More often than not, what they're not saying says more than what they are saying. In fact, I have a saying, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. What you're not saying is speaking so loudly. So that offers us an intimate glance into the essence of the person and their motivations and who they really are in a way that we can connect more deeply. In the early Christian history, a faith community where there was such a level of care and concern, where deep listening and genuine curiosity were complemented with trust and respect, that was called koinonia. And koinonia is a Greek term that literally means communion. So we're practicing communion when we seek to deepen our connection and develop a bond of common unity. When we allow others to see us deeply, which is a whole nother message, and we work to see the other person deeply. Making and nurturing relationship with others, to me, I think it's a weaving of the interior and the exterior. In the interior, we have an opportunity for self-awareness and self-reflection, combined with probably some self-adjustment, some change that we have to make, balanced with the outside-in perspective of what is this other person bringing to me? Am I open to what they're saying? Am I receiving them with respect and care? And in this era of singularity, where what is true today may not be true tomorrow, it's easier than ever to reach a large number of people. We can go live on Facebook or Instagram and reach hundreds of people, but it's harder than ever to truly connect with them. By paying close and care-filled attention to others, we can deepen our human connections, and we can strengthen our own ability to weather this constant change. I'd like to leave you with kind of a benediction of sorts. Now go with peace into your world, with patience and openness in your heart. See one another, hear one another, laugh with one another, care for one another, and love one another. It's as easy as that, and it's as hard as that. And so it is. Amen.